Hey guys, welcome back. We've got another little project here today. We're just doing a service and maintenance on this. This is a Kitchenaid Model 4C. You can tell from the color it's avocado green, which would pretty much date it right there. The knob doesn't stay on. It fits really loose and it just comes right off. And then looking at it, you can see there's in that slot right there. There's supposed to be a metal clip, like a bent piece of metal that keeps the tension against it, that when you push it on, it'll stay on. Fortunately, I've got a couple of these knobs around, so we can replace that, no problem. But I've got it plugged in. We're going to turn it on and see if it runs. Alright, there's the first speed there, and it seems kind of slow and a little bit rough. As we go up through speeds, it doesn't sound too bad. It probably just needs a good cleaning. I'm sure the gearbox needs to be completely cleaned and re-greased. So we're going to go ahead and unplug it, and I'm going to start pulling these brushes out of here. We'll check those first, if they will even come out. Here we go. Alright, it's got good looking brushes in there. At least that one looks good. Pull out the other side and see what this one looks like. And I'm pretty sure this one's good as well. Yeah, they do look like they got some oil on them. But as far as length, they're in good shape. Man, wow, that's really on there. Gotta figure out a way to get this off of here. There we go. Just need a little more leverage. Can't really get a grip on this knob too well. It looks like it's got a little gunk and maybe a little bit of corrosion on it. But overall, not too bad. I'll just finish taking this handle assembly off here. Alright, handle assembly's off. It doesn't look too terribly dirty in there. And it doesn't look too terribly dirty in here either. Now you can see there's some stuff right here that got on it under the handle that couldn't be wiped off, but we'll be able to wipe that off, with the handle off. I think I'll start under here and we'll get this off where the planetary gears are at. The end of this, the head of this screw has got a bunch of grease caked in it. Alright, I'm going to have a screwdriver with more leverage. seem to get the leverage I need on here to break this thing loose. There we go. Wow. That was really on there. Gonna have to definitely clean that screw up. It's packed full of grease in the end of it. Alright, let's get our planetary off here. Very carefully. Alright, you can see there's really no grease left on the gear or on the ring gear in here. Now we'll get all that old grease cleaned out of there. Yeah, there's really no grease on that ring gear at all. Alright. Now I will get to the gearbox here. And I'm betting this isn't going to come right out either. These are always in there pretty good. I mean, it's a nice tight machine fit. But a little bit of patience. I mean, sometimes, oh, like this one seems to be coming right out. Sometimes these are stuck in there pretty darn good, and they're extremely difficult to get out. This one came right out, actually. Alright, there's the gears. It came right out with it. You can see all the grease that's in there. It is packed full of grease. And the grease doesn't seem to be terrible. I mean, it's a little thicker than you'd expect, but I think that's just because some of it had, it's separated and some of it's run out, which is what caused it, the stain around here. This is just where it broke down and ran out through there. So we'll get that cleaned up as well. I think it came out with almost all the grease. I'm going to try and get this gob of grease out here, because eventually it's just going to fall out. Just get out the chunks I can see for now. Alright, so that's how much is still left up inside there. And we got all this over here. I mean, it's a lot of grease on here. This thing's actually got some weight to it. I mean, I know it's, metal gears and all that, but I mean, there's a lot of weight just from the grease on here too. These Kitchenaids, they do take a lot of grease. Some of this seems a little more solidified than some other parts of it. Alright, that's good for now. Alright, let's get the back part here. The only thing holding this back cover on here is just this one little screw under here. And then there's a pin that goes in the hole up here, so you just got to kind of rock it out. Alright, and here's the speed control part of it here. Now, on the speed control, this is where you can actually adjust your speeds on here. When you turn this handle, it basically makes this whole assembly, go in and out to control your speeds. And then these screws right here, you adjust these in and out to pull your back in or out, and that's what adjusts your speed on there. But to take these off, there's a spring here that basically just keeps it pulled tight against the towards the front of the machine. It keeps the tension on that. And then here there's two little lock nuts on here and a bunch of flour right here. Just loosen up these lock nuts. And you can unscrew this entire assembly. And I just have two contact points that are under this little paper cover on here, little dust protector, so they don't get, floured up. And then the black wire on these, the uppermost wire always goes up here to the resistor. And then the nice thing about these Kitchenaids is, they got quite a few wires in here, but they are color coded. So your two black wires go together here. Over here, this one's got red on the left. So all your red wires go together. And over here we've got yellow, and all your yellows go together. Alright, now we got this out so we can clean this up. And then here is a capacitor for the speed control. And it's actually inside this paper sleeve. And these are your wires that hook to your cord connection and to your field coil. But now we're going to pull these two screws out here, and that'll take this back plate off, and we'll be able to pull this all out with the armature and get the armature out of here. And if you're going to be working on yours on the back here and pulling the armature out, don't forget that your brushes have to come out first. Same thing on any of these mixers. If you're going to be pulling an armature out of them, brushes have to come out first. And some of the mixers, some of the brands have secondary brushes in them. Like Hamilton Beaches, for instance, they'll have a set of secondary brushes that have to come out as well. on the Sunbeams, the ones that have the secondary brushes on Model 9 and older, you have to remove the speed control on the secondary brushes and all that before you can even get the armature out. Alright, so now we've got to get our spring disconnected from here. No, actually we don't. We just got to lift up our little the arm that goes from the dial to here. We just got to get it up in this notch here. Alright, maybe the spring is in the way. There we go. Okay, now we can pull this whole assembly out with the armature. And the armature on there, it could use some polish, but it's not worn at all. So that's a good sign. And to take this off, this right here is just basically just slips on here over a pin. And usually they pop off pretty easy. There we go. So you see the pin that's on there, and it's got a slot right here. You just pop it down over that pin. And now you can pull the pin out first. Now you can pull the armature right out of this back bearing, and you can see on the bushing back here, you can take these screws out and get to the bushing and the wicks in there, so you can clean those up and get that oiled up. So that's something that we're definitely going to do. And get the spring out of there. Now, if you're doing any other service on this, you got 2 more screws that hold your field coil in here, and you disconnect your you gotta take your switch out of here and unhook your switch. One of these switch wires, I believe, goes to the one brush holder, and the other brush holder you got to disconnect, and you can pull all this out with all your wiring, disconnect your cord from it. These leads that got the black protectant on it right here, these are the leads from your cord, and they're just hooked to these wires that you see tucked alongside there. So it's really not that complicated. Electrically, there's really not a whole lot to these. They're not as complicated as you would think they are anyways. I mean, when you first take it apart and you see a whole bunch of wires, you think, man, that looks like a lot of wires, but basically you've got these that go to your motor. You've got also got a set that goes to the speed control, and you've also got a set that goes to that capacitor. So when you put them all together, like I said, it can look like a lot. And you got the ones that go to your resistor as well. So it's just a lot of wires right here in the back, but once you start taking this apart, they all come off and they're color coded to make it easy to put back together. So like I said, not all that complicated. But now I got to get to the gearbox in here, so I got to lay this on its side. The only other way to really do this easier is if you were to pop this pin out and take this whole assembly off right here. And I'm thinking this pin looks pretty loose, so I'm thinking that's what we're going to do. Alright, and there's our hinge pin. And there's the base off, and we also got to replace the feet on here too. 3 of them are missing. So I'm just going to set that out of the way for now. Now we can concentrate on getting this cleaned out here. Let me get you guys down here so you can see. We're going to get the rest of the grease cleaned out of this gearbox here. You see, it's pretty. I mean, it's pretty easy to get out when it's pretty solidified like this. There's really not a whole lot to it. Most of it's stuck in the gear section there, so there's really not even a lot of grease in here. There's some old grease stuck to the gear here. So we got to find a pin on this gear for the PTO. And I believe I've just found it right there. So we've got to get that pin out of there. And this pin, I don't know if you can see the pin in here. Let me try to show you the pin I'm talking about. Alright, on here there's a pin right here, and this pin you just have to drive it through, and once it starts to go through you just rotate this around and pull it out the other way. Let me see if I can drive this through on camera for you. Tricky part is, the gear wants to spin, being that it's not really, there's nothing holding it back right now. So you got to kind of get one finger on the gear. There. Now you can see the pin is protruding from that end there. It's not going to be the easiest thing, grabbing a hold of a greasy pin. So maybe we'll just drive it through a little bit more. There, now we've got a lot more pin exposed. Wow, a lot more pin that still don't want to come out. Alright, plan B. Let me find something that will fit down in there. Okay. Now at this point you can't have this thing completely vertical like that, because it's going to get to a point where the pin is going to hit that housing. So just get at a bit of an angle. And see right there, I think I just bumped into the housing at that angle. So if I can go a little bit more of an angle, there we go. Now the pin should be pretty much most of the way out of there. There we go. Alright, so we got this pin out, and it's not knurled on any end, it's not bigger on one end than the other, it's just a straight pin. Now with that pin out, in the end here, you can see this is, I turn this around, you can see this is the drive for the attachments on the front for the PTO. That right there needs to come out now. And that's usually a little tedious too, because there's really no way to grab onto it. Well, let's see what we can do here. Zoom back out. Where was I? Oh yeah, trying to get this PTO shaft out of here. There we go. So if you can grip it with something like that, you know, they're not stuck in there. They come out pretty easy. Just a matter of getting something, some kind of pressure on here to be able to lift it out. And that's what the PTO shaft looks like. And now we can get our PTO gear and the washer right out, ready to be cleaned up. I believe, yeah, it does seem like the washer is only on the end that's towards facing the back. There's no washer on the front of it. So we got this gear out, and this can be cleaned up and degreased as well. So other than wiping out the grease out of the inside of here, this part is pretty much done. We're going to try and clean up this where it's stained around here from the grease coming out. So I'm going to set this part aside for now. Move this out of the way. That won't do nothing with it yet. Let's work on the greasy stuff first. Alright, so this is going to have to go into the degreaser, that and the washer. I'll get these gears off of here. You gotta look on these, because there's usually pins that seem to hold everything in. Like, let me clean this off a bit so I can find it on this one. Alright, here it is right here. There's a little pin. Can you guys see what I'm working on here? Go down a little closer. Alright, right at the top here there's a little pin. It's a very small pin, but you got to pull that out. And then there's a washer on top and a gear. So you can slide this whole assembly off here. Now we're ready to get all the grease off of that. And then this one here, this whole assembly just slides right out. And this is the part that goes down through the planetary right there. So this comes off, and then there should be a washer. Yeah, there's a washer right here. Now this right here, you can take, you know, all this grease off of here and get this part cleaned up good. So that's what we're going to work on now. We're going to get everything degreased, and then we'll come back and we'll get everything put back together and you know, get it fired up. All right, we got everything all cleaned up and ready to put back together in here. So we're just going to we're going to go in the reverse, sort of in the reverse what we did, because we're going to put our gears and shafts in here first, and then you know, our cover piece will go on top of those. But you know, the way it usually comes apart is when you pull this out, they'll usually come out with it. But anyways, first thing we got to do is get our PTO assembly back in here. So we're going to start sliding the PTO shaft through. I'm not sure, can you guys see? Yep, you guys got a view in there. Alright. Along with our gear and washer. We just want to get everything to engage. And then once it's engaged, we can turn it till we get our holes lined up right there for our pin. Now, pin, just got to go back in here and hold everything together. Now when you put your pin in, you just want to drive it flush. That's the goal there, is just to get that flush. Alright, so now the PTO assembly is back together. And you notice all getting greased. I'm still going to get a little bit of oil on here. On the shafts on here, they do have like spiral grooves in them to, you know, help wick grease in to the bushings, between the shafts and the bushings. Let's see if I can find an example. Yeah, like on here, you know, you can see that that's just to help wick grease in, to grease up the bushings. And it does work, because when you take those out, you know, unless the grease gets incredibly hard in these, it does seem to work and be pretty effective. Alright, so now we've got to put, we've got our different shafts that got to go in here. The first one will be the worm gear here that engages the PTO. On our shaft here, it's just assembling it kind of in reverse. You got to put the pin on here because it locks into a notch down there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the pin on, and then I'm going to, if I can pick it up, put the washer on. And it's the bigger of the washers, the thicker one that goes in these shafts, and we just want to make sure that it goes down in the hole and that the pins engage in the slots in there. Alright, now we want to put our worm gear on, but we want to make sure we get grease on the threads on here. Right on the gears, make sure it's got a lot of grease on it. And when I say a lot, I mean you can pack it on there because these things do get a lot of grease. Alright, I'm going to slide that down. And if you want, I mean, you can see how if I rotate it around, it's sucking the grease in down here. You know, you can lay in gobs of grease in here and rotate this around until it sucks it in, until you get that entire PTO gear covered. Like I said, don't be afraid to use a lot because these things do take a lot of grease. Alright, there, now it looks like our gear is completely covered. Alright, so now my fingers are too greasy to pick anything up. Alright, so we got to put our bearing on here now, but we want to make sure that we have some grease inside of it as well. And that's where the bearings are. Okay, so there is a washer that's on there. That's on that bearing on the other side, and we want to put one on this side here. And just put everything back together in the order that it came off, and you'll be alright. Okay, so now we've got that gear in. We've got to put this gear in. Okay, this gear also gets a washer, and the washer sits, of course, right on there. Make sure we get a decent amount of grease on here. And I definitely just want to put a bunch right on the back of this gear, since we're not going to be able to get to it once it goes in. We set our washer on there, and this will sit right on there. Got that in there now. Now it's basically trying to pack as much grease in here, because we have the back of that gear loaded with grease. We can pack up here where the armature is going to come through. And all on top of this gear now. Okay, so we got a lot of grease in there now. So we can start working on the next part of this, which is to get this back on, our little planetary sun gear part here. going to throw a washer on there. And I think we're going to throw some more grease yet on the back of this. Because like I said, these things are designed to be packed full of grease. Alright, now we got a big pile of grease on here. Like I said, on top of this shaft here, you don't want grease sitting on top of it, but clean a little bit off of here as well. What we do want to do is, you know, I mean, this stuff doesn't move around too much, but we do want to make sure that we do seat this into that hole right there when we put this together. Get some of this grease off my hands now. Now we're not working inside that anymore. Alright, and that one seemed to seat well because it slid right together. If it doesn't, you can always go back and forth on this a little bit to get that to seat, but this one seemed to seat perfectly right off the get-go. So we'll go ahead and find our screws here. Get this screwed back together. This is a greasy job to do. I mean, you do get grease on your hands, and you will get it on the machine, but you know, I mean, you can wipe it down later, clean your hands good, and wipe it down. I mean, I get grease on them. Even on working on any of them, I get greasy hands. But these just take so much grease, and everything is just covered in grease. Go through and tighten up your gearbox cover here, which is also got the ring gear here, or sun gear, I guess it's called, being that it's got a planetary that goes around it. I believe that's the sun gear. I don't know. Never been big on technical names. A lot of stuff I make up names for. But I do believe that's called a sun gear, if I'm not mistaken. Alright, that part's done. So right now I'm going to go take a break. I'm going to get cleaned up because I have grease all over. I'm going to wipe the outside of this off, and then we'll get started on the rest of our parts here. Okay, that's a little better, easier to handle. So we've got this all cleaned out. And these things, they have a hole that goes through here, and there's like a big, thick piece of rope that goes in there. It's supposed to be a wick to get grease in there. And you know, I mean, if you're cleaning out oil, grease, and everything, you pretty much got to take it out. But they're almost impossible to get back in there. So I just packed this full of grease and just shove it through the hole where the rope used to be. Like I said, this stuff is really good at staying in place. You know, even under revolutions, you know, like higher RPM, you know, or heat or anything like that, this stuff does an excellent job staying in place. So I'm just gonna make sure I get enough packed in there. And I don't think grease will really wick through a wick, especially this grease, you know, until it starts to break down and the liquid starts to come out of it, and then it'll soak in through that wick. But anyways, alright, so we got that part done. Now this has two pieces that got to go back in here, and this is one of them right here. Okay, so if you see, you know, like I said, this has those threads on there for the grease, to wick the grease, so we can actually go ahead and just put a little light layer of grease on here now. open up in here. Now we go to wipe off our excess that we got on everything. Okay, where's my parts here? Here we go. Got a washer on here. Our pin, this gets a little pin that holds everything together as well. Like I said, all this stuff is pretty much held together with pins. And if you look on the bottom of the gear, that's got a notch in it as well. Can you guys see what I'm doing here? Yeah, okay, that's got a notch in it as well, and that fits right over the pin. And not only locks that pin in there, but it also locks the gear onto the shaft. Alright, so we've got one more washer that goes on here, and then our screw with the lock washer. Alright, now I just got to screw this together. That's going to be nice and tight. Now we can get more grease on that. Alright, and being that this ring gear in here was dry when I opened it up, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get some grease all around the inside of that as well. I mean, you don't have to pack this part full, but just get yourself a layer on the teeth of the gear here. And that's what I always do. One more pin. And that's the pin that will lock our planetary on there. Without that, I mean, this shaft will just spin and this will never move. Alright, so now I do need to find, there we go, the screw assembly that I just cleaned off. Before you get everything put back together, also it's a good idea to look around and just make sure that you don't have any screws, pins, washers, anything like that left over. Because the washers are basically you know, where the gear meets the aluminum. It's to put a so it's not rubbing directly on aluminum, or to space things out to a certain level. You definitely want to have everything where it's supposed to be, and all your parts back in. Alright, I'm going to stand this up like this. And I was looking at the cord on here, and the cord looks in excellent shape, so we're not actually going to replace the cord on this one, you know, which is unusual, I know, but this cord does look in excellent shape. Now we can go through, we can put our armature, drop our armature down in the hole. Now there is grease in that bearing. When I was packing it around, some grease was going into that bushing there, and you can see even on the armature, you know, you've got these grooves cut in it. That just helped to wick oil in there to keep it lubricated. And with the grease that's in there, I mean, it's going to wick the grease in here. I mean, you know, with the grease that's in there, that'll work out perfectly. Alright, there we go. Now we've got our armature in there. Everything is turning nice. That's another thing you want to check, just make sure everything turns nice and free. Let's set this down for a second. We're going to put our our bushing back together here. Like I said, this thing comes apart on the bottom. There's an oil wick down in here, but you want to make sure you get that oiled up good. And it may, like this one's bone dry, so it can suck up a lot of oil. Alright, you want to put your bushing in. And then you've got this little piece right here that's got a tab on it. You want to make sure that that tab goes, where's that hole? Right here. That the tab goes right in that hole. And that helps to center your bushing in here. Then there's a spring that goes on here. It's a pretty beefy spring, but it's not super strong. That keeps pushes down on this plate that goes over the bushing to help keep everything, you know, like I said, lined up. And then your cover plate can go on. And this basically, you have to push it down with your thumb and hold it, and then you can start getting your screws. Start getting your screws in here to hold it together. Now they're not big screws by any means, but like I said, a spring doesn't have, you know, that much pressure on it. I mean, it's a big beefy looking spring. You can hold this thing down easily with one thumb. If you're taking it apart though, I mean, there is enough pressure if you're taking it apart and you don't realize it's in there, and you take off your last screw without holding this thing down, I mean, it will pop off and go flying. Alright, stand our mixer back up again here. Now you got to be careful of the arm that goes in and out here for the speed control when you put this on, and also of your two wires that come out here. Let me get just another squirt of oil in here. Now that's all together. Got some on my fingers. But yeah, just be careful of everything as you're putting this back together. Your wires and this arm, because your wires have to fit through the slot in the bottom, but this arm has to fit through this hole in the top here. And just like when it came out, you have to lift it up to put it in. There we go. I'll go ahead and get this screwed into place first before we do anything else. And this will pretty much hold everything together. Alright, so now we can rotate this around so we can see the hole where our pin goes for the governor on here. And we pop that in and get our governor on there. There we go. Okay, next thing we want to put on is our resistor here. At this point, I'm going to put it back on the scale just to make life that much easier. Alright, we've got our cleaned up speed control here we got to put back on. So I'm going to put this back in here as well. Just watch your wires here that they don't end up trying to get pinched in here. And at this point you're just taking a guess on how tight to tighten these. I mean, once you start trying to adjust your speeds, then you can go ahead and finalize that. But now you can get all these wires hooked back together. Like I said, it's color coded, made it easy peasy for you. Okay, I know the camera cut out. I'm not sure exactly where it cut out at, but we got everything buttoned back up back here. We got the back on. We got our speed adjusted. We got everything cleaned up, wiped down. I'm going to go ahead and run it through the speeds here before we put it back together, just to double check, make sure that you know, that everything's running good before we get the rest of this put back on here. Let's start at speed 1. Okay, now at speed 1, like I said, you want to have about 60 revolutions per minute, so, you know, 1 revolution per second. And the best way to tell is, you know, just put your finger out here and try and time it. You know, you can go like 1 1000, 2 1000, 3 1000, 4 1000. So we've got our low speed set. Now we go up and run it up through the speeds. And just to make sure that we have all the speeds. Okay, so it sounds good, and all our speeds sound great, so I think we can go ahead and we can finish buttoning this thing up here. I think we can get our handle back on with a Phillips screwdriver. And I did find a metal clip that goes inside of here, so we can go ahead and we can put this back on. Okay, and it still will come off. I mean, it's designed to pull off to take everything apart on here, but it's not going to just fall off like in shipping or anything. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and unplug it now that we know everything works good. We'll put our end cap back on, and we'll put our little lock for the attachments back in here, and we're just not going to crank it as tight as it was. Alright, so now that we got that done, let me show you a couple things on here that we also got done. there was, let me see, make sure you guys can see the bottom here. All that staining that was around here, we got rid of all that with some simple green and a Scotch Brite and just lightly rubbed it so we didn't scratch the finish. But we were able to get all that staining off of there. On the very bottom, you can see we've got all brand new feet on the bottom. And you know, and that's it. I mean, this one's done, ready to go, shipped back to the owner. So if you guys have any questions or comments about this, let me know. I try to do as much detail on here as I could for some of you guys that have these and want to do them. I'm sure I missed a lot. It was, you know, it wasn't. I wasn't planning on doing an entire how-to on it, but once I got into it, I figured I'd try and point out some things. So hopefully I covered most of this stuff for you. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe so you get notifications. And apparently, if you want to get notifications, you have to click on the bell down there next to the subscribe button as well. Even if you have subscribed, hit that bell. And that way you'll be sure to get notifications when we post new videos. And as always, guys, I appreciate you watching, appreciate the views, appreciate the comments, the likes, and all that. And we'll catch you on the next one.